Harry and Meghan should be shaking in their boots right now if they are not already. And they could have had the best of all worlds if they had played their cards right. But this was a route Harry and Meghan decided to go down where they trashed their family, and this is the result.
This is no longer just a celebrity story. It is a story about branding, inheritance, and an argument over who gets to define what royal even means once you move the whole project 3,000 miles away from the monarchy itself. That is the tension running underneath everything Harry and Meghan do now. Not just the interviews, not just the documentaries, not just the lifestyle launches. The deeper play, at least in Tom Bower's view, is much bigger than that. He sees a long game. A years-long effort to build a parallel identity in America, one that keeps the prestige of royalty while operating completely outside the structure, discipline, and culture that made those titles matter in the first place.
Harry and Meghan not following exact protocol kind of makes sense, you know? Harry and Meghan's children are unlikely to ever get anywhere close to becoming, first, second in the line of succession.
And once you look at it that way, a lot of the scattered details start lining up. There is the reporting that URLs were registered for Archie and Lilibet. On its own, that might sound ordinary in a world where wealthy parents lock down names online early, but critics do not see it as a random precaution. They see it as part of a pattern. Harry and Meghan left Britain, built a life in Montecito, kept distance from the institution, and still pushed to secure prince and princess titles for children being raised in California, not within royal life in Britain. That contradiction is what people keep coming back to. If the children are growing up outside the monarchy, outside its duties, outside its culture, then what exactly are those titles supposed to mean in practice? That question sits at the center of the entire debate. Bower's interpretation is that none of this is accidental. He describes Meghan as someone who thinks long-term, and he points to reported habits like keeping detailed written records for her children as part of a much larger instinct to shape narrative, preserve perspective, and build future value out of personal history. In that reading, these are not just family keepsakes. They are part of an archive. Part memory, part mythology, part infrastructure. For whatever comes later. And that is where the idea becomes more provocative, because the suspicion among critics is not simply that Harry and Meghan want privacy, it is that they want selective visibility, distance when scrutiny arrives, but relevance when status is useful. In other words, not an exit from royal identity, but a redesigned version of it. More Californian, more commercial, more controllable. That framing also explains why Bower keeps arguing that Meghan understood the stakes from the very beginning. In Revenge, he presents her as highly intentional early on, not naive, not swept along, not unsure of the system she was entering. His version of the story is that she knew the value of proximity to monarchy, understood the opportunities attached to it, and approached the relationship with a level of calculation her defenders reject, and her critics consider obvious. Whether you agree with that or not, it does help explain the shape of the Sussex years. Because what we have seen since their departure is not a clean break. It is a constant negotiation between rejection and reliance. They criticize the institution, but remain tied to its symbolism. They present themselves as independent, yet the market value of the brand still depends heavily on royal association. That dependence may also explain the uneven state of Meghan's business efforts. Bower's argument is blunt. He believes the deeper problem is not aesthetics, timing, or social media chatter. He believes the real obstacle is investor confidence. In his telling, the stop-start quality of the product rollouts reflects a harsher truth. Serious money has not lined up behind the Sussex brand at the level needed to turn a celebrity lifestyle concept into a durable company. That matters because it changes how these launches look. Instead of reading like the rollout of an established business, they start to look more like proof of concept, less empire, more audition. Enough movement to signal potential, enough visibility to attract a backer, but not yet the kind of structure that suggests a finished machine behind the curtain. While Meghan tries to prove commercial viability, Bauer sees Harry dealing with a different problem entirely: shrinking leverage. His view is that Harry understands the clock is moving. King Charles is ill. William is the future. And once that transition happens, Harry's already damaged position could become even weaker. In that context, every story about communication, every public signal, every hint of contact with palace figures starts to look less like reconciliation and more like maneuvering. Bauer was especially dismissive of reports around meetings involving Sussex and palace staff that later surfaced in the press. His interpretation was that this was not strength. It was an attempt to create the image of relevance, a way to imply channels were still open, influence still existed, options still remained. But in Britain, he argues, that kind of visible media choreography does not project power. It projects anxiety. And that takes us back to the children, because this is where the emotional and symbolic stakes really escalate. Archie and Lilibet now occupy a strange position in the public imagination. They carry royal titles, but live in America. They are connected by blood to the next generation of Windsors, but are being raised far from that environment. They are shielded from public access in some ways, yet remain central to the branding logic of the family. For supporters, that is simply protective parenting. For critics, it looks like controlled scarcity. Keep them private enough to avoid scrutiny, but present enough to retain mystique. That tension is why reactions get so strong. Many Americans do not see these children as having any meaningful royal role in American life, and the idea of an imported aristocratic identity does not sit naturally in a country that defines itself, at least in theory, against hereditary status. So when people hear language that sounds like a softer, shinier version of royalty being transplanted into California, the pushback is immediate. Not because the children themselves are responsible for any of this, they are not, but because adults are making decisions around them, and those decisions have symbolic consequences. The ugliest part of the public conversation is where online speculation spills into claims about births, timelines, and family history. Those rumors exist, and they circulate constantly in royal watching spaces, but they remain unverified and should be treated with caution. The more grounded point is simpler. If the Sussex brand is built around family, identity, and a carefully managed public image, then public trust becomes crucial. Once people begin to suspect they are being managed more than informed, every unanswered question grows larger than it should. Bauer's larger fear is that this does not end with branding confusion or awkward headlines. He thinks the real damage is institutional. Harry has already shown that he is willing to take private grievance and turn it into public product. The Oprah interview did it. The Netflix series did it. Spare did it. And Bauer's view is that this pattern is not over. He notes that substantial material was reportedly cut from Spare before publication. He points to the possibility of future books, future disclosures, future monetized revelations. He also believes Harry still sees himself as wronged, still feels he is owed an apology, and still does not approach the family rupture with genuine remorse. If that is true, then every truce is temporary, because the underlying incentive structure never changes. Conflict keeps paying. That is why Bauer sounds so dark on reconciliation. He does not think the real breach is fixable, especially with William. From his perspective, too much has already been said in public, too much humiliation has already been inflicted, and too much trust has already been burned away. Even Charles, who might be the most emotionally open to some form of contact, is constrained by the people around him and by the reality that every renewed connection risks becoming future material. So the story stops being a family drama and becomes something larger. A monarchy survives on mystique, hierarchy, continuity, and the careful management of distance. Harry and Meghan survive on disclosure, disruption, emotional access, and monetized intimacy. Those two systems are fundamentally incompatible. One preserves value by containing the story. The other creates value by telling it. And that is why the children matter so much to this entire conflict. They represent the next possible chapter of the Sussex brand. A new generation, a softer image, a longer runway. A way to keep royal relevance alive in an American setting long after the current cycle of memoirs, interviews, and lifestyle launches loses momentum. That, in Bauer's reading, is the real strategy. Not just survival, succession. Not just a celebrity household in Montecito, but the outline of a rival court built on title, image, grievance, and reinvention. The question is whether the public buys it. Right now, the answer from many critics is no. Not because they care less about the monarchy than Britain does, but because the whole proposition feels mismatched to American instincts. Celebrity? Yes. Wealth? Obviously. Status? Constantly. But royalty in any meaningful civic sense is another matter. Americans may consume royal drama endlessly, but that is not the same thing as accepting a royal class of their own. And that leaves Harry and Meghan in a difficult position. Too royal to fully become ordinary celebrities. Too estranged to function as working royals. Too dependent on the institution they attack to fully escape it. Trying to build something new with the symbols of something old. That is the contradiction Tom Bauer keeps pointing to. Strip away the headlines, the products, the leaks, the interviews, and the family psychodrama, and his claim is very simple. This is an attempt to preserve royal capital outside royal control. The problem is that once the distance becomes the identity, the capital starts to thin out. What makes this story so revealing is that it was never just about escape. It was about replacement. Taking the language, status, and mystique of royalty, stripping it out of Britain, and trying to rebuild it in California as something more profitable, more flexible, and easier to control. That is the real gamble. Not just distancing themselves from the monarchy, but trying to keep the value of it while rejecting the structure behind it. And if Tom Bauer is right, that is exactly why the whole thing feels so unstable. Because once royalty becomes branding, once family becomes product, and once grievance becomes strategy, the contradictions start stacking up fast. That is why the public pushback keeps growing. That is why the desperation keeps showing through. And that is why this story still feels far from over. Because what is being fought over here is not just reputation. It is legacy, leverage, and who gets to cash in on the royal connection long after the bridge has already been burned. And that is what makes this more than gossip. It is a power struggle dressed up as reinvention. If you want more deep dives that cut through the PR and get to what is really going on behind stories like this, stay locked in with BarzBuzz, because there is a lot more to unpack, and this saga is nowhere near finished. If this saga had you shook, wait till you see what's next. You already know what it is. BarzBuzz got the real, raw, and unfiltered breakdowns. So don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to catch up.